The big, beautiful bill. Will it affect you as a real estate investor? Well, that's what we're talking about today in this episode of the Never Lose a Deal podcast. Hello, my name is Lorelia and welcome. So let's get into it. The big, beautiful bill. But before I get started, always want to let you know who this podcast is for. It's for real estate investors who want to learn how they can expand their portfolio and scale it by using creative finance strategies. And so today we are going to dive into my topic today, which is the big, beautiful bill. So, unless you are under a rock, you may have heard about the big beautiful bill. I believe July the 4th was when it was passed. But before I go into that, let me just say it's been a while since I have actually went live on a few platforms. I'm actually streaming on YouTube and I believe LinkedIn, and then eventually this podcast will go on to the podcasting platforms. So I also want to celebrate that today I am filming episode 50. Woo! I guess I should have some type of sound effects or what have you. But yes, this is episode 50 of the Never Lose a Deal podcast. But if you're familiar with me on YouTube, you know that I have over 1,000 videos on the topic of business credit, personal credit, and real estate. So, not new to this conversation, but let's dig in. So, like I said, unless you have been under a rock, and if you haven't been under a rock, then you know about the big, beautiful bill. So, let's unpack it. And so, I always want to say, let me just preface this by saying, like, this big, beautiful bill has nothing to do with what party you align with. I'm not making this a political rant. I'm making it a business rant because, as I mentioned to you, this podcast is primarily for real estate investors. And so I want to look at the big, beautiful bill with how it can possibly enhance or probably add some type of value to your real estate business. And that is how I've approached it. That's how I've been looking at it. And so that is what I want to talk about today. So without doing a deep dive, kind of just want to do an overview of how the big, beautiful bill can possibly be something of value to you as a real estate investor. So, what I'm going to do right now, I want to just pull up my notes. So, for those who are watching, you will see that I'm actually looking down at my phone because I made some notes to kind of check into what it is that I wanted to talk about today. But I also want to get into some other things that have went on this past week and going to tap into those as well. And it has to do with housing director Polt. So before I go into the big beautiful bill, um, let's kind of talk about that. Just give me 1 second as I validate my phone. So, like I was saying, um, housing director Polt, Pulte. Hope I'm saying the name right, so you know what I am talking about. Made some very big announcements. And one of the announcements had to do with the Vantage score. Now, for those who are listening and watching, I didn't forget about the big, beautiful bill, but I also wanted to touch on that because the title, as you can see, has to do with this topic that I'm talking about. And so Pope made an announcement that Vantage score can now be a scoring model used for mortgage lending, primarily for those mortgage lenders who are in the FHA space. Now, for those who do not know, never want to assume people know what I'm talking about. If you're not familiar with Vantage Score is a scoring model that was created in '06 by the credit bureaus, by Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. It was supposed to rival FICO. But of course, FICO, being one of the leaders in the space, has been around since personal credit has been created. Lenders never used FICO. They never use Vantage score. They always use FICO. So Vantage score was always a joke. For those who were in the personal credit space, um you may have been advised, you may have been advised by a person that you are listening to, who is giving you advice about personal credit, if they're doing it ethically. They've always said that Vantage score, it has no bearing. It's a joke. Of course, as soon as I get on the phone, all these alerts come through. And so the reason why it is a joke is because lenders never look at it. Any type of credit decisions that have ever been made, for you as a consumer or as a business owner, when it comes to pulling your credit, has been based on what FICO says. And so I always tell people, especially when I'm doing any type of advisement in the space of credit, because it affects everything that you do. It's not, even though I do help real estate investors on the financing and lending and funding side, but credit comes into the conversation. So you can't get away from it. And so, with me saying that, I've always told clients the credit bureaus or the entities that house the information. FICO is the one that does the scoring. So you have two different entities that provide you, information about your personal credit. You have the credit bureaus, and then you have FICO, two different entities. Well, as of this week, I believe it was July the 8th, as I look at my notes, July the 8th, Polk made that announcement on Twitter that a mandate has been made that now FHA lenders can now use Vantage score. And so a lot of times, if you're wondering, well, where do you see this, this infamous Vantage score, Larulia? Well, a lot of times, if you've ever, subscribed to Credit Karma, Credit Sesame, any of those third party apps, they give you a Vantage score. So that's why a lot of times, when you have people who are giving you personal credit advice, and they tell you, oh, in order to manage your credit, look at Credit Karma. It's always been laughable, because when you pull your FICO score is never what the Vantage score is. I tell you that to say, if you're wondering where does the Vantage score comes from, it comes from a lot of times those third party apps. Some of the credit bureaus will, even if they send you your credit report, they'll even attach a Vantage score to it. But of course, in the past, has always been laughable, because if you know this, and maybe you don't, lenders never look at the Vantage score. They just don't look at Vantage score. They look at FICO. Well, things have changed. As of this week, things have changed. According to the mandate, because I read it, um, mortgage lenders have said that FICO has been charging absorbent of fees when it comes to them having to pull credit. Now, when I say mortgage lenders, I'm talking about FHA mortgage lenders, governmental loans that are backed by Freddie and Fannie Mac. Even though myself, I'm in the commercial space, don't do FHA, don't help clients get FHA loans. But since I'm in the space of real estate, I like to stay abreast of what's going on. But this mandate primarily will affect those who are mortgage lenders in the FHA space, because they said now mortgage lenders can pull the Vantage score. Now, before you get yourself up in a tussle and say, oh, it's going to cost so much money, lenders aren't going to do it because of the infrastructure. Well, according to the mandate says that they don't have to change their infrastructure. And for me, that's scary because what is that going to look like? If a lender is using a scoring infrastructure that uses FICO and they want to incorporate Vantage score, what is that going to look like? Now, one may say, well, you know what, Lorelia, why are you even worrying about that? It's so much bigger than us. You know what? If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. This is my feelings on it. I tell people all the time, you can look at it any way you want. It is good to stay abreast and know what is happening in the world, especially if you are in the world of real estate, in the world of finance, in the world of lending, and especially if you are using those tools as vehicles to be able to build wealth. You want to be aware because I feel like the next 5 years, and this is where it gets good. If you look at any of my past podcast episodes, I talked about this. Now, I didn't talk about in the sense of, in terms of Vantage score being a new scoring model that lenders can, but I said that life as we know it economically is going to change. The next 5 years, in terms of personal credit as we know it, being able to get financing, being able to get lending, is going to change. And that is why I have said before, don't let content creators online have you to believe that they are bigger than these billion-dollar, trillion-dollar entities. It is what it is. So I say that to say things that you do now in terms of your personal credit, how you approach it, how you get financing, is going to be totally different in the next 5 years. Mark my word, you've heard it first here on the Never Lose a Deal podcast. So that's something to stay abreast of, especially, like I said, if you are in the real estate space and you rely on financing or lending, or maybe you assist other people with it in terms of maybe you have clients who need housing, you sell homes or what have you. You want to know what's going on. But let's get back to the big beautiful bill. And so let me say this for those who, like I said, this has nothing to do with what a political party you align with. I'm only talking about the big, beautiful bill from the aspect of business and real estate at that. Some of the things that I've noticed in the big, beautiful bill is that one, it favors real estate investors and business owners than they do W-2 wage earners. Hate to say it. A big wealth transfer is happening, and it's going to happen in the next couple of years. Once again, I talked about that, like I said, in other episodes. What it's going to look like is going to depend on you. And that is why I said you need to understand how the big beautiful bill will affect and influence what you are doing in business and real estate investing. Speaking to those who are in that area of business, because that is what this podcast is about. This is for the who's this podcast is for. So any changes that go on with the big beautiful bill, now is the time for you to really look at your real estate business and really be able to map out and figure out whether you're doing it with a tax professional, whether you're doing it with an attorney, and or maybe even someone like myself, a loan advisor who can advise you on what are you going to do in the next couple of years, being able to leverage some of the things that are in the bill. And I'm going to go over that. I say that to say, if a big wealth transfer is going to happen, will you be in that number? Will you be one of those who are going to sit on the sidelines and be in fear and say, a lot of things are happening and I have no control. Are you going to be that person? Or are you going to be the person who's going to say, you know what, I have control of this? Because this is what I already know. If you're a real estate investor, and primarily I'm speaking to those who are high achieving real estate investors, those who feel like, or not feel like, they know that they have carved a place for themselves in whatever area of real estate that they excel at. One not being better than the other. It's just that they have carved their own road to say, this is what I do in real estate. I do it well, and I'm looking to amass, an amount of wealth that is for them, and not being able, and they're not being influenced by what other people can tell them how they should be able to amass their wealth. And like I said, for everybody, it is different. But with saying that, if you are that person who is going to take personal responsibility, you are going to be that person who um, is planning on charting their own way and being very proactive and not reactive to everything that is going on in the next couple of years, then you should be looking closely at this bill. So some of the things for real estate investors that I've pointed out was that a lot of the provisions that were made in the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act for the last couple of years are going to be able to come back. And so a lot of those things is, the 20% pass through deduction that benefits S Corps and LLCs. And so, without me giving a class on taxes and pass through entities, I understand those things only because in a former life, I started my career at one of the largest accounting firms in the US. And with saying that, I've worked many years as an accountant. So I understand, and believe you me, I've did a lot of tax work. So I understand pass-through entities, but I do not give advice on those. And so pass-through entities, for those who use them, they are very familiar with them. Pass-through entities come from S corps, partnerships, and what's created is a K1, and that K1 flows over to your individual tax return. So a lot of those benefits are going to be coming back. Bonus depreciation is going to be restored. I've talked about that in the past. Bonus depreciation comes in a lot of times when you buy assets, especially with what I do. Business owner wants to expand, or they want to scale their portfolio. They know they're going to leverage financing. They don't let the financing scare them, because why? They're going to get the tax write-offs with the depreciation. And then, of course, now they're going to get a bonus depreciation. So that is why they are real estate investors who debt doesn't scare them. So if you've heard my podcast episodes in the past when I've talked about why the wealthy leverage debt and taxes, is because it creates what's called phantom income. This is income that does not get taxed. So once again, that is going to be a very big thing for real estate investors, about them bringing back bonus depreciation. Another thing is 1031 exchanges will stay intact, or they may be expanded. And then also possible interest deductions for higher leverage portfolios. And I've talked about the depreciation loopholes. Another thing that I want to point out is that, and this is, I've read somewhere, so I didn't get this from the Big Beautiful Bill, but I did read something where a professional talked about that state and local taxes could possibly be higher due to these changes that are happening on the federal level. So I say all that to say, just by reading this bill or being familiar with it, you will know that a big wealth transfer is going to happen. my question to you is, will you be in that number? Will you position your business, talk to your professionals to be able to take advantage of some of the things that are going to take place in this big, beautiful bill? Reason why I'm looking down is because I want to make sure I'm just covering a lot of some of the things that I pointed out. Another thing is the cost segregation. Now, cost segregation has to do with, once again, depreciation. So I did talk about depreciation, but there are some real estate investment classes where cost segregation can really help a person save a lot of money. I know in my when I worked as an accountant, I didn't do a lot of cost segregation work. That's a very specialized area, and so many of the CPA firms that I've worked with, they had when you work with a big firm, they have another department that will handle cost segregation. So I was never really involved in that type of work. We would just take the information from the cost segregation specialist to be able to apply to the tax return. But once again, this podcast, I'm not giving no tax advice. It's just that I am familiar with these terms because I have worked in this capacity. And I say that to say these are the things that are going to take place with this big wealth transfer. It is what it is, yeah, like I said in the beginning, does the big beautiful bill favor W-2 wage earners? No, unless they are investing. And I've said in the past, a lot of clients of mine who do have high incomes, and I know high is relative, but I'm talking about those who make above 250 on a tax basis, especially if you're a single man or woman, you can possibly get hit with a very big tax bill. And so the way they offset that is they are investing into real estate, creating portfolios for themselves to be able to lighten the tax load with what they pay. So that those are just some of the things that I wanted to point out. Like I said, just to do a recap, pass through entities, deductions, bonus depreciation, possibly expansions with 1031 tax exchanges, cost segregation, and so it is what it is. And so how will you be in that number? Where's your business right now, and where do you possibly see or want to see it in the next couple of years to be able to take advantage of some of these changes? Now, I want to just give a little history lesson. I remember being a young adult in the 2000s. For those who are old enough, and so in the 2000s, if you all know who was president at that time, like I said, this has nothing to do with political affiliations or what have you. But during that time, there were some changes that took place once again in real estate. And so those changes that did take place, real estate investors took advantage of them. Now, I will say this: at that time, I was a young adult. I was working professionally, so that was when I had on my accountant's hat. I was working as an accountant in New York City, working for some of the largest CPA firms, um, and so I remember being that accountant who was doing the tax returns of the ultra wealthy. And so I would see them investing in real estate. A large portion of their portfolio had real estate. Of course, it was other things as well, but they were highly diversified, and real estate was one of them. And that right there, it gave me the aha moment, because during that time I'm reading books, typical young adult, lived in New Jersey, traveling in New York City. ride was only about, 20 minutes from, if those who are from the tri-state area, 30 minutes on the train from Newark, New Jersey to New York City. You're not on the train that long, but you're on it long enough to be able to read a book. And I remember around that time, that's when I got first introduced to Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad. And as I'm reading the book, I'm seeing those things that I'm reading. I'm actually doing it at a job. Like I'm in the role of being an accountant, seeing how, all these entities that these, the wealthy people are investing in. So I'm seeing it, like I'm like, oh, this is what it looks like in real life. That's what made me want to take real estate seriously. So, being a young adult, reading the books, getting exposed to things, not only am I exposed to it professionally, but I'm also reading about it, able to bring those two worlds together. Well, of course, that birthed me getting into real estate. And so, once again, during the timeline, new president 2000, if anybody knows what real estate was about, you know how it was during that time. We had a good window. There was a great window going on. That window was so great that in 2000, 2006 was even better. It was even better. Well, of course, the whole bottom fell out in '08. It is what it is. Now, you got people that they want to predict. Well, I feel like this is just going to be a redo of what happened before. Hey, like I said, I'm only going to control the controllables. I'm going to control what I can control. I cannot control what housing director Pope is going to put out. I can't, I cannot control what new things are going to come down the line from the government standpoint of other initiatives, but I can control what I can control. And that has to do with my own economy. Going back to don't be reactive, be proactive. And that's really the main point of my podcast episode today is who are you and how will you be able to control your real estate portfolio as an investor? Will you leverage some of the things in the big beautiful bill? Will you at least be aware of them? Will you go talk to your professionals to find out how can I be able to position myself and my business in real estate to take part in these initiatives? And like I said, those conversations may be with your accountant, your CPA, your tax advisor, your attorney, someone like myself, your lending partner, to see what you want to do in the next couple of years. Because, like I said, this is not just good conversation with saying, "Oh, a big wealth transfer is going to occur." This is saying you could just literally read the world as we know it is going to change. Now, I was just going to do a separate show on it, but let's just talk about another initiative that also happened last week. That housing director Pope made an announcement on Twitter. Crypto. And I'm no crypto person. I invest in it on a personal basis, but I give no advice on it. No expert. I don't give no advice on it. Don't talk to nobody. I just do it from my own portfolio. But do you know that housing director Pope made another announcement that crypto is now going to be an asset class that is going to be part of Freddie and Fannie Mac? Now, without doing a finance class here on this podcast, but for those who know, Fannie and Freddie Mac are governmental agencies. They back your FHA mortgage. Many of the investments that are within the pool of these governmental um, backed mortgages will now include crypto. Will now include crypto because our current administration wants to be a leader in the cryptocurrency space. Do you get what I'm saying? The next 5 years is going to look totally different. So you want to be abreast on these mandates that are happening, or because crypto being part of a pool of investments that are within the Fannie and Freddie Mac portfolio. Like I said, do your own research. This information is not under a rock. You may be under a rock, but the information isn't under a rock. So I tell people, do your fact check. Go check it out for yourself. And there's no way that life as we know it now is going to be the same in the next 5 years. Let's look at what recently. 5 years ago, we were in a worldwide pandemic. 5 years later, the world as we know it is different. Same things here. On an economic level, the world that we know is going to be different. Now you just need to decide, are you going to be proactive or are you going to be reactive? And so that is all that I have for you today. I will say this, for those who want to learn more about what I do and how I help people, you can continue tuning into the Never Lose a Deal podcast. But I also want to share with you, I currently now have put a book together, a small guide to help real estate investors navigate the mortgage financing space. And so the book is called The Mortgage Freedom Plan: How to Help Self Employed and Real Estate Investors Get Financing Without Personal Tax Returns and without using their personal income. I say all that to say because with all these initiatives that are coming down the line, you want to know all the possible avenues that are available to you. High achieving real estate investors, they know they're not trying to be an expert in everything. And so understand when it comes to outside of FHA, because like I said, I don't do FHA, don't do conventional, don't do VA, don't do USDA loans. Primarily, I work in the space of in the asset-based lending space, and that falls under commercial. And it is too much for one to say they know everything. You don't. And but if you're serious about scaling and being able to expand your portfolio, you do want to work with somebody who can help you navigate those waters. The hardest problem, and I feel bad for a lot of professionals because they desire to scale and expand their portfolio, but they're listening to FHA people, or they can even be experienced and they can't get out of their own way because they don't realize they don't know what they don't know. Your other financing professional may only have access to certain products in the space. So I say that to say the book, the Mortgage Freedom Playbook, is a book that can at least give you some insight, like I said, just so you kind of know what's going on. And if you want to learn more about that, you can just go to www.neverloseadealpodcast.com and you will see a link on that website for you to get your copy. And so currently, right now, it is an ebook, but it will be a physical book soon. So I say that to say now is not the time to um, react to things. You want to really be proactive with how you see your life, how you want to design your life, as well as your real estate business. And so I want to help you navigate those waters, keep you informed of what's going on. And that is why I do the Never Lose a Deal podcast. And so if you know someone who is in the real estate space and they want to get information that can help them, like I said, expand and scale their portfolio using creative financing, please let them know about the Never Lose a Deal podcast. Please share it. Let me know your thoughts. If you're listening on YouTube, leave me a comment. If you are on some of the social media sites, because like I said, I haven't went live. Usually I do a pre-recorded version and I upload it, but I'm live today. We're episode 50. Leave me your thoughts. Let me know what you think. And until the next time, I will see you in the next episode. Okay, bye bye.